This program is brought to you by Pussy Magnets.
Put a midge on your fridge with a pussy magnet.
Welcome, my lovely lumps. Or should I say lovely labs? I'm so thrilled to have you here in the Labia Lounge. We're going to yarn about all things sexuality, womanhood, relationships, intimacy, holistic health, and everything in between. Your legs. Ooh, can't help myself. Anyway, we're going to have vag loads of real chats with real people about real shit. So buckle up, you're about to receive the sex ed that you never had and have a bloody good laugh while you're at it. Before we dive in, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. It's an absolute privilege to be living and creating dope podcast content in Naarm, and I pay respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. Now, if you're ready, let's flap and do this. Oh my God, is there such thing as too many vagina jokes in the one intro? Whatever, it's my podcast. I'm leaving it in.
Don't panic, you're not broken. Your sex education was a piece of shit. Get your flaps out and pull up a couch. It's the Labia Lounge.
Hey gang, just before we jump into this episode, I wanted to offer you an opportunity to access my new mini course for free before I start charging for it in future. It's for people with vulvas and it's quick to complete. It's all about demystifying the female body and pleasure anatomy and getting some basic fundamentals to understand your body better. It's called Pussy Pleasure Secrets, Your Roadmap to Bedroom Bliss. You can grab it on the freebies page of my website or in the show notes. It's a great little free resource to kind of dip your toe in or act as a bit of a taster for my work. So if you've ever been curious about this sort of thing and you just don't know where to start, or you want a really quick, easy, accessible, non-threatening way to get the ball rolling and start working on this stuff, this is a great place to start. Hey, my labial legends, we are back to talk about a very practical and widely applicable topic today. And I think I'll probably call this episode something like relationship maintenance, because I've got a relationship expert on today to help us learn about how to have and maintain a thriving, healthy, and intimate relationship. And probably we'll cover some things like the common pitfalls that couples fall victim to, and a whole heap of constructive practical strategies and tips to keep your relationship in good shape or get out of a bit of a downward spiral of disconnection, resentment, maybe just get out of a rut. So today I've got Zach Brittle, and Zach's been teaching, coaching, mentoring, and counseling couples for nearly 20 years. He's a licensed mental health counselor, a certified Gottman therapist, and a relational life therapist. He's the host of Marriage Therapy Radio and the author of the bestselling relationship guide, The Relationship Alphabet, and the Marriage Therapy Journal. His writings and insights have been featured in Vanity Fair, Men's Health, Real Simple, The New York Times, and The Washington Post. Zach has been happily married to his wife, Rebecca, for 25 of their 28 years together, and they live in Seattle with their 2 adult daughters. So wholesome. Loving this. Welcome, Zach.
It's so weird when people read your bio back to you. It's like, oh yeah, I guess I did do those things. Thanks for having me.
Totally. Yeah, I know. A lot of people put the intro in later, and I just make it really awkward by reading it right out in front of you in live time.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I hope I deliver on the promise. It sounds like a really exciting episode that I would want to listen to if it did what it said it was going to do.
Mate, you've got 20 years under the belt and your own very successful podcast with like over 4 million listens. I think that we're on the money here. We're going to be good.
Right
All right. So first up, I would love to hear more about relational life therapy. I know like a tiny bit about the Gottman method, but I hadn't heard too much about RLT. So can you give us a rundown on these and how they work to build stronger relationships?
Yeah. So relational life therapy is, I don't want to call it new, but it's certainly newer than Gottman method couples therapy. It's written and created by a guy named Terry Real. Terry is he's got this perspective on relationships. What he likes to say is that most methodologies will teach you tools. Relational life therapy works with the part of you that doesn't use tools. So there's a lot of inquiry into childhood trauma, family of origin issues, maybe just styles of relating, whether or not there's active, addiction or something. Because the Gottman method is amazing and it's full of really, really powerful tools for how to communicate and manage conflict and, do friendship. But if you've got two people or one person of the two in a relationship who aren't ready or willing to do the work, then those tools aren't going to be effective. They're going to be useless. And so relational life therapy really seeks to examine, why aren't you using those tools, or what's in the way, or what's the thing that is keeping you from showing up as a functional adult or a wise adult in the relationship. And because when that wise adult doesn't show up, everything is harder. And that's kind of the principle anyway of relational life therapy. And Terry Real, who founded it, is really kind of just really evangelizing this message, particularly in the world we live in now, where there are lots of unrelational behaviors that are kind of running the show. And so that's the difference. That's the difference between at least Gottman method couples therapy and relational life therapy. I think actually I'm the only therapist in the world right now who's certified in both, which is kind of fun. That'll change because RLT is gaining a lot of traction and people are really finding it helpful. I find it really, really helpful to have both. And so I use both with my couples all the time.
Amazing. Yeah, because I feel like there's, plethora of tools out there, but sometimes when you're just deeply triggered or just in a very kind of reactionary, activated state, all of those tools go out the window.
100%.
And it's really common as well that there might be one person in a couple that is just not quite there yet or not quite as willing, or maybe just doesn't have the capacity, potentially has a whole lot more trauma, smaller window of tolerance, and all of a sudden, you're not really on an even playing field. So one person's trying to use some tools from the Gottman method and the other person's just having a fucking meltdown. So
Totally.
I really
I see
like
all
the idea that there's something that kind of goes a layer deeper and it doesn't require you to be consciously implementing tools in the moment that you're in an emotional reaction. I'm curious, what is there a little bit more info you can give me about RLT that, I mean, how does it, you mentioned it goes into your childhood and things like that. Is it similar to other therapies that are already out there, or how does it differ? I still am a tiny bit vague on how it actually works or what you do.
There's a lot of different, just like anything else, it's got a lot of different aspects or facets. And I've found that teaching it is different than doing therapy with it, which is actually also different than training other clinicians in it. There are some centerpieces about it, one of which is the idea that all of us have inside of us what's called an adaptive child. So that adaptive child is the part of us that learned usually between about 4th grade and 9th grade, really quality strategies for how to stay safe and sane in the world. So our families, not all our families were problematic, but from the minute you're born, the world is trying to kill you. I mean, it's trying to starve you to death or freeze you to death. And so you need, ideally, you need caregivers who can provide safety for you, but sometimes they fall short. 100% of my clients complain about their parents and the ways that they fell short. And so when your protectors aren't protecting you in the ways that you might like, you start to form other strategies. And most commonly that's fight, flight, or fix, right? There's kind of these, and we get really good at those, get really, really good at them because we get a lot of practice in, get a lot of reps in. And then we grow up and we try to do intimacy, but we don't have as many reps in there. And so we try to show up and, for a while we get by on being young and healthy and good looking and sex is amazing. And then we're interesting to people and we can be interesting to new people if that person doesn't work out. And then eventually we get to a person that becomes our person. And we start to relax. And when we relax, we revert to muscle memory, which is all of our old strategies. And when you're using your old strategies, it's really hard to do intimacy. And so a lot of people come into my office because they forgot how to, or not even quite forgot, but the work, they didn't know how to do the work of actually leveling up. And so that's this language that I've already used called functional adult or wise adult. And the wise adult is the one who shows up in response to the adaptive child and says, hey, buddy, it's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. But you don't get to run the show. Like, I need to run the show. And thank you for running the show when we were kids. That helped a lot, kept me safe and sane. But now I need to run the show. So when that happens, then you have a chance. But if that doesn't happen, I don't know why. I don't know how relationships survive when children are running the show. It makes sense to me because, again, we get lots of reps in when we're young. So it makes sense to me that you would rely on those adaptive strategies that you formed. But therapy is the process, or at least couples therapy anyway, is the process of learning new strategies so that you can actually achieve the thing that you want, which is intimacy.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah.
I'm going to look more into that. I wonder if there's anyone practicing in Australia, because I hadn't really come across it.
In fact, I regularly train clinicians for the Relationship Life Institute. I teach what's called Practicum 1, which is just the intro for clinicians. And then the last one that I did, I had three gals from Australia. So
great.
Offline,
Cool.
I can definitely hook you up with those folks.
Yeah, totally. That would be awesome, actually. Okay, cool. So we've sort of touched on some things that tend to start happening when we get comfortable in long-term relationship. What are some other common, what are the most common downfalls of relationships, or what's kryptonite to couples that you see most in your work?
I mean, I think it's atrophy. It's a little bit of what I was talking about before. People, when you're first in a relationship and everything is new and exciting, you do some things that, when you win the relationship, you stop doing. So like when you first meet somebody, you can't get enough information about them. Where are you from? Where'd you go to college? How many brothers and sisters do you have? What was your first concert? What was your best concert? What would you do with $1 million? And then maybe we even do some trauma bonding. We go, whoa, what's the problem for you? Or did your parents get divorced? And, oh, that sounds terrible. My parents also got divorced. And we do this thing. We stay up till 3 a.m. and we talk and we talk and we talk. And you can't keep your hands off each other. You're like, oh my God, I can't get enough of you. And let's hold hands and let's have sex, and let's have sex standing up, and let's have sex in the middle of the night. And let me say please and thank you all the time. And I want to look super nice. And I want to make sure that and then we're always paying attention. Like, I have this one little story that stuck in my head somehow, and where you're walking by and you're like, oh, that smells good. That smells like salmon. I love salmon. And then 3 nights later, your partner makes salmon for you because they're listening to you. And all of that is easy early on in a relationship. And what happens is eventually you do that well enough that you get the job. You're like, okay, you're hired to be my life partner forever. And the first thing you do when you get a real job is you loosen your tie. You relax, you let it down a little bit. You don't have to be on your best behavior anymore when you get an actual job. And so that's what happens for couples is they win the job, they get the girl, they win. And then they stop asking questions and they stop being as affectionate and they stop paying attention. And so the thing that comes into my office, maybe the cliche that comes into my office more than any other cliche, is the idea that we just feel like roommates. We just feel like we are ships in the night, and we're really good at raising our kids. We're really good at getting our bills paid. We're pretty good at hosting, block parties. But as far as the thing that got us into this, it's not there anymore. And that's kryptonite, because it's not bad. It's not on fire. It's just boring. And so one day people wake up and they're like, I can't do this anymore. So I always praise all my clients and probably people who listen to podcasts, yours, mine, whatever, that they are at least doing something that the majority of people are not doing, which is asking for help, looking for resources. And so, most people wait too long. Research suggests that people wait about 6 years too long to ask for therapeutic help anyway. So it's just a matter of, resourcing this thing before it atrophies too much, right?
Mm. And when it has atrophied too much and people haven't sort of sought out help, what are the things that tend to happen? Is it like affairs? Do people
It certainly can
kind
be.
of?
I mean, affairs are the sexy one. Like a lot of people think affairs are the deal breaker, or the affairs are the cause of the relationship breaking up, but that's not really it. It's the relationship breaking up is the cause of the affair. Like, because we stop paying attention to each other. But who does pay attention to me is that cute guy at work, or the barista, or who, that's cool. That's new. That reminds me of when we used to like ask each other questions and flirt, and that's amazing, So
Yeah.
that the affair is just not the inevitable, but it's an effect, not a cause.
Yeah.
And equivalent affairs are people who get super into their kids, or people who get super into their job. So they're actually kind of noble. Those are like noble affairs. I love my kid, or I'm earning a living, I'm paying the bills. Meanwhile, I'm still disconnected and not focusing on you, my partner. And then of course, you got people who have affairs with alcohol and drugs, and that's where they go. So, I never freak out about the presenting problem. It's just this like distraction. It's like sleight of hand. Something else is going on that's underneath the surface. And, this is real because I don't know if you've heard this before. I hear it a lot. People say, oh, the one thing I won't tolerate is an affair, or if he cheats on me, I'm gone. And I hear that all the time. But I hear that from people who are in my office who haven't left. Right? They had this thing that they said they were going to do if this happened, and then they don't do the thing that they said they were going to do when the thing happened. And it's because consciously or unconsciously, they know that there's something else that's the culprit. And, so I just kind of like, all right, that's a thing that happened. And now we have to figure out what's really going on.
Yeah, this is a symptom. This is a byproduct of something deeper. Let's just excavate a little bit and take a few steps back. Sort of retrace our footsteps to see how we actually got here.
And I would say too, like I'll just say this since we're on the topic, is I've never ever ever seen a couple recover from an affair when the person who had been harmed, the person who was cheated on, for example, didn't say some version of, I know I helped create this. I know I'm a part of this. I know that doesn't mean that it was their fault. Doesn't mean it was just. It just means that you can't recover if both partners aren't willing to do reparative work.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'll double tap on that for sure. So, can you tell us a little bit about negative sentiment override and how you can kind of recognize when this has taken root in your relationship?
Yeah, it's like a little bit more problematic than the the atrophy thing. Negative sentiment override is, very simply put, in a mathematical way, there's more negative sentiment than positive sentiment in the relationship. So in Dr. Gottman's research, this was actually a metric that couples had. They had a number. And so I'll just make something up. Like if the number was 6 and you as a couple scored a 3.5, that was a negative sentiment override score. If you had a 7, that was a positive sentiment override score. So couples were in PSO or NSO as a condition of their relationship, which was measurable by lots of different kinds of things. But basically, we all know it. We can feel it, right? When we're in NSO, neutral things take on a negative power and positive things lose their power. Everything is harder when you're in NSO, everything. When you're in PSO, neutral things take on a positive power and negative things lose their energy. So a lot of conflict management in a relationship is subject to your sentiment score. And so people want to learn about managing conflict, or they want to settle things. And ultimately, it's really a reflection. How well or how successful you're going to be at that is a reflection of how much positive sentiment is in the relationship relative to negative sentiment. So if you're not stewarding the day-to-day friendship, fundamental respect and regard, you're gonna atrophy, period. But then when resentment starts to build up and you start to, act out, that's when negative sentiment override comes in. And it's way easier to operate out of our adaptive child in that space, because we're just trying to stay safe and sane. And the way we know how to do that is fight, flight, or fix.
Yeah, totally. And does our sort of, wired in negativity bias mean that it's quite easy sometimes to fall into this negative sentiment override and begin
I mean,
picking at
probably.
things and
Yeah.
thinking the worst in a situation rather than going, oh,
Yeah.
they probably didn't mean, yeah.
Yeah. There certainly are those people, right, who wake up every day and they see the weeds before they see the flowers. That's just the way they're conditioned. And that's a hard way to be in relationship. And, the research suggests that people who are in negative sentiment override and who do have this negativity bias, they're actually viewing they have a distorted view of reality. Like, the world is in fact more positive and planted with more positive stuff than negative stuff. But the negative stuff is just louder and stinkier. So when you are inclined to focus on the loud and stinky stuff, you actually miss much of reality. And I've never really said it like that before, and I could go into like a specific research study that affirms this, but the bottom line is that being in a negative frame of mind distorts reality and keeps you from seeing what's the positive things that are actually in front of you. So there's something about retraining your brain to look for the flowers before the weeds. There's something about that is important in relationships. And if you start out with a negative bias because of your trauma or because of your perspective or because your trust metric is too low because you had alcoholic parents, or your first boyfriend cheated on you, or you gave your money to a Nigerian prince or something, like you may just be inclined to look more vigilantly, which sure will protect you, but it will also keep you from intimacy.
So if you come across a couple and one of them's clearly got that sort of bent to the way their brain works, like, what's your strategy to help them rewire to focus on the positive things more prominently?
I mean, first thing I would want to do is learn about what they already know. Why do you think like this? What is the thing that is sourcing this for you? I don't want to be like, why do you think like this? Or what's your problem? That's not it. It's more like, what do you already know about why you look at the world this way? And it might be something really legitimate. Their husband or wife may have been consistently missing or dismissing them, and that's kept them from being able to trust. And so they do look for ways to protect themselves. Sometimes it's just, maybe they grew up in an environment where there was not enough food on the table. And so they had to look out for number one. Who knows? But, once you understand kind of what the origin story is and you start to create some compassion for that, then you can actually start to put strategies in play. Strategies are useless until you have the right receptivity to those strategies.
So there's a couple of questions that just popped into my head. I'm just trying to figure out which direction I want to take it.
No problem.
I guess just to kind of round out the NSO discussion, are there common signs that a couple is really suffering from having negative sentiment override? And do you kind of point it out and help them shift. I've heard like a statistic, maybe you'd know, and this is so vague, but there's something around like, if the conversation between a couple is any less than like 70 or 80% kind of positive regard stuff, then the balance just really tips and it becomes really toxic. Do you know what that statistic
You
is?
might be
I can't-
thinking about, again, comes out of the Dr. Gottman's research, but there's this magic ratio, a 5-to-1 ratio. And 5-to-1 is any negative interaction in a relationship is worth about a nickel.
Mhm.
And all the positive relationships, interactions are worth about a penny. So you have to be driving up positive sentiment. You got to be putting pennies in, because, when you have a snarkastic, a client introduced that word to me, snarkastic, comment, it's like takes a nickel out. And nobody cares about taking a nickel out if you've got $100 in the bank. But if you've only got 20 cents in, then, it's painful. And so you can sort of tell, I can tell pretty fast when I first meet a couple, whether or not, I don't want to say whether or not they're going to make it, but whether or not they have a chance, given just the way they talk to each other. And if they are dug into their resentment and dug into their idea that somehow the other person is responsible for my problem or my sadness, then the road back to health is a lot longer. But if they're, trying with some energy to bring positivity to bear, then, that you can work with that.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's do the segment Get Pregnant and Die. Do you have an anecdote about your sex education that you can share with us?
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die. Don't have sex in the missionary position. Don't have sex standing up. Just don't do it. Promise?
Get pregnant and die. I came up in the 90s, like through puberty and in evangelical Christianity. And so I came up through like the purity culture thing. And so sex education, academically or technically was pretty basic. Like, here's the parts, here's how the parts work. But in my kind of religious experience, the parts were, deadly. You get pregnant, you die, or you're a whore, or you, sex was always attached to shame, and that is, I forget the exact question you asked, but like that is the main problem I have had to work around for the last 40 years. Is how to separate sex from shame. Because I don't think they belong together, and it's unfortunate that we've conflated them.
Yeah. Preach. 100%. I work with a lot of clients who have had religious upbringings, and the sort of common thread is they're all still very much affected by that shame, and it's quite crippling actually, and a lot of them really, really struggle to enjoy sex or to have pleasure or orgasm.
It's a very weird thing to try and assimilate, where you're a virgin or you're virginal or you're trying to be a virgin until you get married, but then after 15-minute ceremony you're okay, everything's okay now, you can do whatever you want. And I was a virgin on my wedding night, but it wasn't for lack of trying. I tried real hard to have sex beforehand. I just couldn't seal the deal. I was bad at it, but I was bad at it because I had no confidence. I was always trying to do it in the dark and trying to make sure that nobody found out about it. And I was trying to do it with girls that I wasn't attracted to or didn't love. And that is just messed up, that somehow we have to learn in an instant to flip it all over. And everything that was once, demonic is now the answer. It's now like God's gift, literally God's gift to you, or marriage or something. I don't know, man. It's really, really hard to wrap your head around, and I hate seeing it. And I'm glad that both of my daughters are not caught up in that scene at all. They
Yeah.
have a lot. They do not have any shame around their sexuality, which is great.
Oh, awesome. Good on you for breaking that cycle. So
I
you
don't know
and
if
your
I did it,
wife,
but somebody did.
you and your wife, were both virgins on your wedding night? Like
She
you
wasn't.
tried, okay,
Yeah,
but you
but
hadn't had sex with her before your wedding?
no, we'd fooled around quite a bit. We'd done about everything else, but we, because we had just had this one box that we had to check, which was don't insert the penis into the vagina. Like as long as we did that, or as long as we didn't do that, we were okay. Which
Mm,
is also weird. I don't know who made up that rule. Maybe I made it up, but again, you just sort of had this sense that like sexuality was different than sex. Maybe I don't know
mm,
it.
mm.
So, but her story is her own, and she tells it. So I'm not stepping on it out of bounds at all. But her sexual experience was sort of before she also became an evangelical Christian, and so her born againness or her recovery included then
Ah,
the
right.
embracing of a purity culture that we maintained together through our dating life, and then voila, everything was fixed as soon as we got married. It's not true. That didn't happen.
Uh, oh, it's so
We're
wild.
still
Okay, well,
working. We're
thank you
still
for
working on it. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, yeah. It's an ever evolving journey,
Yeah.
especially when you've come from the sort of like shame background of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
religion's take on sex. Oh my god, it can be hiding out in little corners even when you think you've dealt with it. So yeah, thanks for sharing. I think a lot of people could relate to that. Um, let's talk a little bit about contempt and resentment in relationships. I know that there's a lot of research around that being like, one of the main things that really kills a relationship is there being sort of resentment. And I guess it sort of already ties into what we've spoken about, but I know you talk about four horsemen of the apocalypse in
Hmm.
relationships, which is
Hmm.
a phrase I hadn't heard
Hmm.
to do with this. But can you tell us what those are and, yeah, go into that a little bit? Hey, baby babes. Sorry to interrupt. I just had to pop my head into the lounge here and mention another virtual lounge that I'd love you to get around. It's the Labia Lounge Facebook group that I've created for listeners of the poddy to mingle in. There you'll find extra bits and bobs like freebies, behind the scenes, or discounts for offerings from guests who have been interviewed on the podcast. There'll also be, hopefully, inspiring, thought provoking conversations and support from a community of labial legends like yourself. My vision for this is that it becomes a really supportive, educational, and hilarious resource for you to have more access to me and a safe space to ask questions you can't ask anywhere else. So head over to the links in the show notes or look up the Labia Lounge group in Facebook, and I'll see you in there. And now, back to the episode.
Yeah. So again, this is another part of Dr. Gottman's research, and he became famous for doing this series of longitudinal studies where he was observing couples over a lifespan of their relationship. Some of those couples were in PSO, some were in NSO. Many of those couples divorced or remained miserable, and he got famous for being able to predict divorce. And
Wow.
one of the most sort of famous examples, or not examples, but predictors, is what he called the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And those are four behaviors that, when they're present and uncorrected in a relationship, they can lead to relationship demise. And they are two of them go together: criticism and defensiveness. So critical people are usually trying to get something from their partner and using like you always, you never kind of language to get it. They're using like attack on their character instead of like talking about what they've done. They talk about who they are. And those people are often in relationship with defensive people. And that's just a cycle. Defensive people, I always say, take the wrong amount of responsibility. They take 0 or 100%. So either they're sort of indignant and righteous about it, or they become martyrs. Like, oh my God, I guess I shouldn't have ever done this in the first place. It's my fault. I'll never. That's also a defensive response. So you've got those two. And then you've got a third one, which is called stonewalling. And stonewalling is when, in the middle of a conflict, you feel like you need to escape. And so you do. You just check out. You check out emotionally, you check out physically maybe, but you just leave. And that leaves your partner alone. So those three are, I think that there's some conversation to be had about the redeeming value of all three of those strategies. I think there is something helpful about being defensive. That's why we hire people to walk up and down the castle wall, because they are good at being defensive. And then there's something about, critical people are looking for change or looking to ask for the thing that they want. They're bad at it. But I think the world needs critical people. And stonewallers are doing the right thing. They're leaving a conversation that if they stay in it, it's going to get worse. And so what stonewallers need to learn how to do is leave in a relational way and then also come back. So, hey, I think this isn't going really well. I need to take a break, be back in about 20 minutes, and then come back in about 20 minutes. That's 3 of the 4. The fourth one is contempt. And I used to think contempt is I hate you, but contempt is I'm better than you. And I don't think there's a redeeming value for this on the planet. When we decide that we're better than someone, we're using criteria that is made up by us. So I'm better than you because I'm a man, or I'm better than you because I'm the mom, or I'm better than you because I make more money, or I'm better than you because I'm a Christian, or because I know more Game of Thrones trivia, or because I am faster. Like, it doesn't even matter. The second we decide that we're better than someone, we eliminate the possibility of intimacy. And so if couples are looking for intimacy, they need to learn how to channel some of their biases toward defensiveness or criticism or stonewalling, and they need to learn how to eliminate contempt by nurturing gratitude, nurturing praise for their partner, nurturing true affection. But yeah, when those 4 are present and they're observable and measurable and they're not being corrected, then there's no reasonable expectation that the relationship is going to survive.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. So we've kind of identified a lot of tricky, crunchy things that couples come up against. I'd love to sort of shift the focus to some constructive, practical kind of tips or strategies or approaches. But first, what are some of the things that most healthy and strong relationships share? Like, what should we be kind of looking for or aiming for? I'd love to just chat about the science behind strong, healthy relationships.
Yeah, I mean, healthy relationships include 2 functional adults, wise adults who come to the table and negotiate in good faith. And they're abandoning what Terry Real would call, what RLT would call losing strategies, and they are embracing winning strategies. And those strategies include things like authentic curiosity and some creativity and some courage. And yeah, they all start with C, but that's how I remember them. People who know how to advocate for themselves and people who are interested in building something versus destroying something. Like, defensive people want to tear something down. Creative people want to build something up. I think curiosity is a very important key. People get into trouble because they think they know, and they become certain. And if you are certain about something, you're wrong because you just don't have enough information to be absolutely certain. So I think healthy relationships include functional adults who are there in good faith, with a commitment to their friendship and a commitment to, navigating difference in mature, thoughtful ways. And they have some shared vision. They have something that they're about. They're about something. And I guess that's my quick and dirty answer.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. I think a sentence that stuck out was they kind of come to the table and they try to navigate things and discuss things in good faith. And I think that's something that can quite quickly disappear when we're in reaction or we're triggered by something and we feel hurt or harmed. It can be easy to then kind of be in the blaming, shaming, finger pointing. Yeah.
I was talking to a client the other day, and he was his wife wasn't on the call. He was just talking about how she does this and she does that and she's this, and and she's that. And let's say his name was, Mark. And I was like, so poor Mark, is that what we're talking about here? It's like, is that the story? He was like, no. And I go, okay, well then what does Mark need to do to show up in good faith with this partner who maybe isn't? Like, you could whine about it if you want to. You have that choice. You're allowed. But it's not going to get you what you want. You got to have to come up and say, hey, I'm going to advocate for myself in a creative way, in a way that actually brings curiosity to the table and not just, I don't know, despair or whining or anyway.
Yeah, because like often you can operate under the sort of assumption that this person loves you and they're invested in your well-being and your happiness, and they probably didn't mean to harm or hurt you in the way that it was received. But then I guess the tricky thing is like, what happens when there's one party in the couple who actually like is, being intentionally either harmful or manipulative or spiteful or whatever, and then the other person, because I see this a lot. I work majority with women, and it happens with all genders, but I see it a fair bit with women where they are so much more committed to like doing the personal development work, to owning their side of it and taking responsibility. And then what happens is if they're with like, a narcissistic partner or someone who's quite toxic and doesn't take any responsibility, the woman that I'm sort of working with, like it starts becoming apparent that she's actually just making way too many accommodations and owning her side of things to the point where like the other person's just getting away with pretty atrocious behavior. And there's this real big imbalance. Like what do you sort of say about those scenarios where one person's trying really hard, showing up in good faith, and actually maybe that good faith isn't deserved from the other party?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different if you're working with them one-on-one versus if you're working with the relationship, because certainly also in RLT, there's a very direct approach to that situation, which is to invite her in this story that you made up to advocate for herself, to ask for what she needs, to have a tall spine and clarity about her desire versus maybe her demand. And then for him, in the scenario you've described, he needs to get off his high horse. He needs to get off of his high horse and open himself up to being an equal partner with her. And sometimes he can't or doesn't want to. And so for her, the kind of the quick, easy, well, it's not easy, kind of the quick piece of advice is to fix it or get out. And if she's trying to fix it and it's not working, she doesn't have to stay in it. I mean, and again, I understand kids, mortgages, sunk costs. I get all that stuff, but nobody needs to be in a relationship that is disrespectful to them. And the way I describe it a lot is that I'm pretty clear that the task of being in a relationship is to find health, to go to like relational health and camp out there, fucking stay there. Do not leave. Build a lighthouse, throw a rope over the side, doesn't matter, but you stay healthy. And if your partner comes, great. And if your partner doesn't come, at least you're healthy as you think about your moves, your moves to leave or moves to set boundaries or moves to ask what you want. You have to do that out of a position of health, not out of a position of, despair or mania or codependency or, boundarylessness or resentment, or you want to get and stay healthy, and then hope, maybe even trust that gravity that you create will pull your partner into the same space.
Yeah.
And if they don't come, that's their loss, and it may be the loss of the relationship, but that losing an unhealthy relationship might actually not be all that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that the average time that it takes for that couples sort of overstay in a dysfunctional relationship is 6 years. When do we know when to give up? When do we know when to abandon ship in a relationship? Like, and it could be because of these scenarios we're describing, or it could be just like values are very misaligned, or we're just not compatible.
Terry Real talks about a tool called relational reckoning, and relational reckoning is is really asking this question, which is, am I getting enough out of the relationship to offset what I'm not getting? Is there enough good? Is there enough upside to trade off to manage grieving the downside reasonable? Like, is it enough? And I think if there is enough, then you have two options. You can celebrate and enjoy and be grateful for what you have. You can also look at the part that's not enough, and you can be upset about that. You get to do that if you want to, but it's not going to help you get more of the thing you want. I think there's, again, a gravity about leaning into the positive side and hoping things come the other way. If you're not getting enough out of the relationship, there's more negative than positive overall, then you still have two choices. And those two choices are to try and work really hard to get to the positive, to flip things over, invest in the friendship, invest in positive sentiment, try so that you can get to the green choices, you can get to the positive choices, or you walk away, which is, people know how to do this. They do this at a car dealership all the time. If you're in a car dealership and you're negotiating and you're not getting the deal you want, and you're not getting the right price for the car that you're looking for, you leave. You go down the street and you buy a car from a different dealership, And again, relative to sunk costs and kids and mortgages and all that stuff, I get that it's really hard, but it's pretty simple math. If you're not getting what you want out of the relationship, either you fix it and you start to get what you want, and you lean into that with some gratitude, or you start to consider your exit strategy, or at least your leverage strategy, meaning what's the or else that has to happen in order for me to seek the change that I want?
What do you think about ultimatums? Like, speaking of the or else and the
We
leverage
all
strategy.
have ultimatums. All of us have ultimatums all the time in our whole life. Like, if I was working, people are like, oh, that's an ultimatum. Well, of course it is. Like, I go to work every day with clients who, if they stopped paying me, I would stop seeing them. That's an ultimatum. I mean, it's ultimately, I will stop working for you if you stop compensating me in a way that's reasonable. And I think that, people go, oh, that's an ultimatum. You go, of course it's an ultimatum. We have them in relationships. If you started sleeping with children, I would leave you, like, that's right. I just picked something that kind of everybody would get on board with. And now we just scale it down. And then my ridiculous thing might not be your ridiculous thing. So, but you don't get to decide what my thing is. So if I say, hey, if you don't stop beating me, that's an ultimatum. I'm going to leave. Now, if you don't stop yelling at me, now, if you don't stop ignoring me, now, if you don't stop, stop not greeting me when you come home from work, like, who cares where the line is? We all have them, though. And so I think if you phrase them like ultimatums and you're like, do this or else, that's one thing. But I think learning how to understand your boundaries and what you need to feel, committed or remain committed to a relationship, it's actually generous to let your partner know what those are.
Yeah, I like that take, because as I've heard a lot over the years about, sort of giving partners ultimatums being really toxic or kind of eroding the relationship. And it's like, where is the line between having boundaries and needs and being toxic and giving too many ultimatums, So I think it's like there's just a different flavor to it when you're doing it for the benefit of the relationship and your own sort of needs and care.
I think this goes back to what I was saying before. It depends on who's giving the ultimatums. If it's a functional adult, a wise adult giving the ultimatum, that's different than an adaptive child.
Yeah.
So the functional adult who says, babe, this is what I need out of this relationship in order for me to stay. Or this is the boundary that I need. Like, let's say you have a drinking problem. I need you to go to rehab in order for me to continue to show up in this relationship confidently. And I'm sorry about that. That stinks. I wish you didn't have to go to rehab, but that's where we're at. And if you can't go, then I'm going to need to take the kids and provide some safety and security that isn't. That's an ultimatum, but that's an ultimatum from a wise adult, versus you drink too much and you better quit or else I'm leaving. Those are different.
Yeah.
So
really
is one of them
flavor.
toxic? Sure. But they're both ultimatums.
Yeah. And I think, like, it is kinder to be clear about your needs and
Clear
your
as kind. We tell our kids that
expectations.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. What are like some kind of creative, intentional practices that can help couples nurture, this sort of good faith mentality and curiosity and affection and like bids for attention within the
Yeah.
relationship? Just to like what actually does keep the connection strong, or if they're kind of in a bit of a rut or disconnected, how can
Yeah.
we reconnect? Excuse this quick interruption. I'm shamelessly seeking reviews and 5-star ratings for the potty because, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, it's pretty fab. And the more people who get to hear it, the more people I can help with it. Reviews and ratings actually do make a big difference to this little independent podcaster. And it's really easy to just quickly show your support by taking that simple act of either leaving 5 stars for the show on Spotify, or even better, writing a written review and leaving 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts. Or if you're a real overachiever, you can do them both. That would be mad. If you're writing a review, though, just be sure to use G-rated words, because despite the fact that this is a podcast about sexuality, words like sex can be censored and your review won't make it through the gates. Lame. Anyway, I would personally recommend doing that right now while you're a member, just to get on top of it and let me know you're with me on this journey. Thanks, gang. Enjoy the rest of the epi.
I have a go-to answer because it's quick and convenient, and it, is it the answer? Not specific, not necessarily, but for example, I tell my clients, I think they should have 4 dates a day, every single day. You should have 4 dates. People are like, oh my God, that takes forever. We don't have time for date night. I'm like, this will take less than 10 minutes if you do it right, which is every day. If you're in the kind of the standard stereotypical, we wake up, we go to work, we come home from work, we go to bed, start all over. If that's your, if that's not you, this might not apply. But if it's you, then in that day, you have 2 reunions and 2 departures. Your first reunion is when you both are awake. When the second person wakes up, we are reunited into the day. And do you do that on purpose? Maybe you lay in bed with a little extra eye contact. Maybe you snuggle before you get out of bed. Maybe you take a shower together. Maybe you have a toothbrushing ritual, something that says we greet the day together. Then you have a second date, which is your first departure. And that's when one or both of you leave for work. And is there a secret handshake, or is there a, here's your lunch money, or is there some ritualistic moment, a prolonged hug? I often will suggest that couples say to one another in the morning, hey, what's one thing I should ask you about at the end of the day? Like, eliminate how was your day from the equation by telling them what you would like them to think about. That's date number 2. Date number 3 is your second reunion, which is when you come home from work, or one or both of you comes home from work. Now we're reunited into our home. We're going from out there to in here. And maybe that's when you ask the question, how was your dentist appointment? How was your conversation with your mom? How was your run? Did you drop the time you were looking for? Some kind of intentional reconnection into the re-entry into the home. And then the 4th date is the second departure, which is when one or both of us go to bed. And people say, oh, we don't go to bed at the same time. And I'm like, that's okay. You can go to the bed at the same time, and you can say a prayer or gratitude practice, or just tuck your partner in and then go play your video games or watch your show or read your book. Doesn't matter. But when you do that, when you, nobody, I don't know if people will be able to look at my hands, but this idea that we're disconnected, we're in parallel, we're running parallel lives. All of a sudden you're just putting these little wavy touch points in, and 4 times a day is a lot, especially if you do it on purpose. So if you're just looking for a really easy, simple way to take back connection into your day, I say 4 dates.
I love that. And for the listeners that can't see the video, it's like, we're on these parallel paths and they just converge at these 4 points during the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think like I'm a huge romantic. I just love cute little thoughtful bids and reminders to show my care. So I'll often suggest things that I do, which is like, writing little notes and leaving them around the house in a place I know that person's going to find them, or sending a text during the day with like a line from a poem or a book, or
Yeah.
saw this thing and thinking of you. Like there's lots of very,
Yeah.
very accessible ways.
Yeah.
And I know you talk about like, there's one that I really liked that I saw on your Instagram about telling stories, like rehashing stories with each other.
I have no idea what's on my Instagram. I don't.
No, well, it was
It's
like,
not my
I
job.
was, dude, do you create the content
No.
though?
No, I record the podcast and then my team like culls it and they pull quotes and they like turn it into stuff.
Ah.
I don't
Okay, well,
touch
it
it.
might have been something they pulled from a podcast
Yeah,
episode,
yeah.
but it was
I
like the
probably
three
said it.
stories.
I just don't know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It was like the three stories you should like talk about. And it was like, the story about how we met, the story of the future we want to build together. I
Yeah.
can't remember the third, but just
Yeah.
like, yeah, actually spending some time reminiscing, spending some time like telling, like, this is what I like to do, is like telling stories of our experience of that person from our perspective. So, from our lens that they might not have heard, and then hearing how they experienced it and them coloring in some details that you weren't aware of or whatever. And just like, I never really get bored of talking about those sorts of things, and that just almost like reignites a little bit of that initial like excitement and love, and then also dreaming about the future and like making plans together and visioning together is something that's
Mhm.
really powerful as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, also pulling nouns from a bowl, does that ring a
Yeah.
bell to you?
No. That's the noun game. I love the noun game. I talk about it all the time, which is like if you're just like driving along and you don't have anything to talk about and it's just dead air or something, and you're like, oh, I wish I had something to talk about. Just say a word. Roller coaster, bench, cigar, ocean, umbrella. You, Freya, you just thought of a story you haven't thought of in a decade because like you think you've already heard everything about your partner, but you don't even know anything about yourself. And I say bench, you're like, oh yeah, I broke up with my first boyfriend on a bench and da da da. And I want to tell you that story. And it was raining that day, and all I wanted to do was get inside. And now you're just talking about something. You're talking about nothing, but that's actually what you did when you first met one another. Is you just talked about nothing. So let's do that more.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. I often recommend like conversation cards, and
Sure.
just just spark stories, and
Yeah.
think about things you haven't thought about in years, and keep learning about each other, and like bring back some of that like curiosity from the honeymoon period
Yeah.
into day to day, where like maybe you'll initially have just been not able to shut up, and then a few years down the track you're in the car together and just feels like you've got nothing to say, or you're sitting at
Yeah.
dinner and you're like, oh god. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's ways that you can bring a bit of that back in with a lot of the like resources available nowadays. There's heaps of great conversation cards and
Yeah.
like couples prompts and things like that.
No
um
shortage.
cool. Okay, so let's do the segment TMI. We love it.
Mhm.
And then I've got like one or two more little questions before we wrap up. Do
Okay.
you have a TMI story for us?
TMI, we love it. Said TMI, we love it.
Remind me what the TMI story is.
So it's just like things that would usually be considered too much information for like dinner table talk, and that maybe people would be like, "Oh, TMI." Like that's kind of off the cards in terms of like acceptable conversation. Anything to do with sex or bodies, periods, poo.
I mean,
Um
maybe what I would say is like, Rebecca and I are celebrating our 28th anniversary this weekend. And we are
Congrats.
going to be talking about our sex life. Like we're going to be talking about like what that is, how that's working for us. We're about to empty nest. So there's a little bit of a context shift in our home. And so, what I would say, if that's TMI, it's sort of in the category of like even a relationship expert has to stay on top of this topic, like, or hasn't figured it all out. Like I still have a lot to learn. So it's not really a gross story about pee or poop, but I think there is something about thinking that you maybe should have arrived. And I don't mind telling people that we haven't. Or when we did arrive, then the game changed and they were like, actually, now it's over there. So we had to go again on a different, or rather like, I don't know, we arrived at the fair, but then the fair went to the next town, and we're like, if we want to go to the fair, we got to figure out how to get to the next town. So, or the carnival, maybe. Fair is too close to a fair, but yeah, I don't know if that metaphor makes sense. But there's something about if I feel embarrassed at all, and I don't quite, but if I did, there's something about like being an expert, but also not having mastery.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I completely get that. I love that you bring that in because I talk about that a lot where like, you kind of think that you've done the work and you're pretty far ahead of where you once were and you've kind of arrived and then the goalposts shift or
Yeah.
a new sort of challenge or situation presents itself. And I've done quite a few episodes on, sex and intimacy in long-term relationships because when you're navigating change of any sort, kids come into the picture, illness,
Yeah.
injury, menopause, like
Yeah.
there's so many things that can shift the goalposts. And so sex and intimacy, it's just something you have to constantly iterate on. It's not going to be the same forever. You're not just going to arrive at this like perfect point and it's going to stay great. Like it's something you have to continue to work on, just like relationships, just like
Yeah.
communication styles. And I also try to role model that thing that you just did where it's like, sure, I'm a sexuality expert. And also that doesn't mean I know everything and my sex life is always perfect. Like it's
Mhm.
more just like, the thing that I am proud of that I do have as a result of being an expert in this field is like a beginner mindset and
Mm.
curiosity and acceptance with where I'm at right now and knowledge that I can get to where I want to be if challenges arise and you know that it's just a never ending journey of continuing to work on stuff and you think that you've removed and released all the layers of shame and then one day you find yourself in a certain situation and oh look there's a little bit that's been hiding out and now I got to deal with that great like
Mhm.
it's kind of constant. And then when you involve another person with their own needs and journey with that and relationship to sex and their body and the way their body's changing as we're aging, like, God, there's so much to navigate. So I love that you are just real about that because that's
Yeah.
fucking relatable. And I think there's a lot of pressure on, experts to be perfect and know everything in their field to have the
Yeah.
credibility. But like, I way more respect people that admit
Yeah.
that, they're not
Well,
completely
the
across
line
it.
in my bio that has gotten me more business than any other any training I have is this idea that I've been happily married for 25 out of 28 years. Like that that alone has won me more, business than any certification I've ever gotten. And it's true. We had 3 years that were really, really hard. They were at 3 really distinctly different parts of our marriage and we had to like hustle and figure it out and recover.
Mm,
So
yeah, word. Absolutely. I think people appreciate that realness and that relatability and it shows that you can overcome, the rupture, the repair,
yeah.
the navigating. I
Yeah.
actually totally didn't read your bio that way. I just read it that you'd been together for 28 years and you got married after 3 years and you were married for the 25 out of 28.
No, I've
Now
been
I'm
happily
reading it
married
and
for
I'm like,
25 out of 28 years. Yeah.
"Oh, totally." I love
Yeah.
that. Cool. All right, so I'm curious, is there like and this is kind of based on what we've been speaking about, is there like a certain amount of conflict that is healthy and okay in a relationship? And like, what's the line between like healthy and unhealthy? If like people are wondering, like, God, do we fight too much?
I think
Where, like,
any amount of conflict is okay. And, Swedes are going to have less conflict than Italians because culturally it's just part of the way that they're wired.
yeah.
Um, what matters is, are you good at repair? Like,
Hmm.
um, everybody in my family, my wife, my 2 daughters will tell you that we are good at repair. So we actually don't stress out about conflict because we have conflict and we like it happens and then we figure out a way back. And I always say that the best possible outcome of conflict is makeup sex. It's and everybody, it always gets a laugh, but it's makeup sex is great
Oh, yeah.
sex. And it symbolizes that you've come all the way through something hard back to intimacy.
Mm,
And it doesn't have to
mm,
be sex, right? It can be a bowl of ice cream that we share. It could be a nice snuggle or just a agreement, even to disagree. But some conflict is actually amazing when it creates more intimacy. And so if you can
mm,
understand it in those terms, like the goal here is makeup sex or deeper understanding of one another, I don't think there's any reason to avoid it. Conflict without pursuit of intimacy is just violence, and that is problematic. So you have to figure out how to navigate that. But I think conflict's. I think you ought to have conflict. Conflict helps you grow. So,
and what about like these couples that I'm sure you see as well, where they've kind of fallen into a pattern of like chronic rupture and repair, but the repair is not particularly constructive. It's just pretty much make-up sex, which is a relief from the conflict, and nothing's been resolved. But, you know, they almost get addicted to the drama cycle of like conflict and then make-up sex. And like, how do we know? Because it's got a really different flavor to like proper rupture and repair and then enjoying a, you know, newfound intimacy, as opposed to like fighting and then having really passionate, dramatic make-up sex as like, you know, a way to relieve ourselves from being in the conflict. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I guess I'm sort of like, who am I to judge? If that's what they want, that's what they want. But if it leads to the same old, eventually they're going to get bored. I mean, it's just, if they're, you know, and it's going to run out, the novelty of that rupture and then kind of faux repair will run out, and they will need to bring different skills to bear. It's just a matter of whether or not they're aware enough to do that, I suppose.
Yeah. And last thing, what about when kids come into the picture and the kind of marriage or the relationship takes a bit of a hit because of this? Like, are there certain strategies specific for parents to like ensure that the connection of the couple's protected and nurtured, even with this extra load of parenthood?
Yeah, I mean, the very quick answer is back to what's just sort of universally true, which is that having a strong friendship foundation is really critical. And the children come in, and while they're not trying to be malicious, they do want to destroy your friendship. If you if you said to a child, "Hey, infant or toddler, baby, would you like 100% of my time and attention and affection and love?" They would say, "Yep, I will take it." You know? And so because they're so good at receiving it, and they're so good at like soliciting it, and they smell so good, and they, you know, and you made them and you're so in love with them, it's really easy to give them what they want. And so it's important on behalf of the relationship that you don't do that, and that you preserve your friendship, that you still have date night, that you still prioritize one another, that you carve out time to listen. And, you know, you have to phase that in, because if you ignore your children as infants, they will die. But you know, everything has its time and its place, and it's just making sure that you protect the friendship, so that when the children don't need you 24/7 anymore, there's still remnants of the relationship that you can rely on.
Yeah, love that. Awesome. All right. Well, it's been awesome chatting to you. I've learnt heaps. I'm sure the listeners found all of this really practical, really relatable. Do you have anything else you want to leave us with, or anything we didn't cover off you want to make sure that we mention?
No, I'm good. I always love talking to people. I love talking to people with cool accents and cool vernacular. So that's pretty fun. If people want to find me, yes, I have a podcast called Marriage Therapy Radio. I'm focused almost exclusively on interviewing couples. So I do that because most people only hear from a few couples in their lives. They hear from their parents, or they hear from, you know, their neighbors or something. And I get to hear from hundreds all the time. And I was like, I'm going to help other people hear from other couples. So I interviewed my parents a couple weeks ago. I've interviewed people who are on the rocks. I interviewed famous people. Just today, I interviewed a couple of teenagers, 17, 18 years old.
Wow.
So I think when you get more exposure to more stories, you get more context and capacity to do relationship well. So that's at Marriage Therapy Radio.
Sorely in need of role models and like healthy relationship modeling. And
you even need people who are doing it wrong and are asking for help. Like that's part of the gig too.
100%. Amazing. Well, I'll pop all of those links in the show notes for people to check out. And yeah, it's been a dream. Thank you so much, Zach.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad this worked out.
Hey, me again. If you'd like to support the potty and you've already given it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening on, I want to mention that you can buy some really dope merch from the website and get yourself a Labia Lounge tote, tee, togs. Yep, you heard that right. I even have Labia Lounge bathers. Or a cute fanny pack if that'd blow your hair back. So if fashion isn't your passion, though, you can donate to my Buy Me a Coffee donation page, which is actually called Buy Me a Soy Chai Latte, because I'll be the first to admit I'm a bit of a Melbourne cafe tosser like that. And yes, that is my coffee order. You can do a once-off donation or an ongoing membership and sponsor me for as little as 3 fat ones a month. And I also offer one-on-one coaching and online courses that'll help you level up your sex life and relationship with yourself and others in a really big way. So every bit helps because it ain't cheap to put out a sweet podcast into the world every week out of my own pocket. So I will be undyingly grateful if you support me and my biz financially in any of these ways. And if you like, I'll even give you a mental BJ with my mind from the lounge itself. Saucy. And I'll pop the links in the show notes. Thank you. Later. And that's it, darling hearts. Thanks for stopping by the Labia Lounge. Your bum groove in the couch will be right where you left it, just waiting for you to sink back in for some more double L action next time. If you'd be a dear and subscribe, share this episode, or leave a review on iTunes, then you can pat yourself on the snatch because that's a downright act of sex-positive feminist activism, and you'd be supporting my vision to educate, empower, demystify, and destigmatize with this here podcast. I'm also always open to feedback, topic ideas that you'd love to hear covered, questions or guest suggestions, so feel free to get in touch via my website or over on Insta. You can also send me in TMI stories to be shared anonymously on the pod. My handle is FreyaGraf_the Labia Lounge, if my account hasn't been deleted for being too sex positive, which, is always a possibility with censorship. But just in case the chronic censorship finally does obliterate my social channels, I'd highly recommend going and joining my mailing list and snagging yourself some fun freebies for the trouble at www.freyagraf.com/freebies. Anyway, later, labial legends. See you next time.